Hello everyone, my name is Gabby, and welcome back to the Dragon Ball Super Review, this time reviewing episode 129. With Ultra Instinct, Goku manages to hold his own against Jiren, but has difficulty landing a decisive blow. Just like against Kefla, he can't stop himself from thinking as he attacks, and to top it all off, Jiren has figured out how to see through Goku's movements. But as Goku closes his eyes and focuses entirely on the fight, his aura gets larger as he starts switching to offense. Jiren launches a full power attack to end it, but Goku suddenly manages to nullify it effortlessly. As he starts countering Jiren, everyone realizes now that not only his eyes, but his hair is silver. He's reached the complete Ultra Instinct. So, what did I like about this episode? Well, first of all, I honestly really loved the visuals in this episode. I think they were done really well. Apparently this episode was directed and I think also storyboarded by the same guy who did episode 110, and you can really tell. In that, just like in episode 110, the visuals in this episode did a lot of kind of showing instead of telling. Now don't get me wrong, there was telling as well. There were moments where the characters would basically just start like expositing over the things that we were supposed to be seeing, just in case people didn't figure it out. But I feel like what made the episode so great is that the visuals did such a good job of communicating what was supposed to be happening and kind of how strong these characters were supposed to be and sort of what the scale was like, that really you didn't necessarily even need the exposition to understand what was happening. The episode had a lot of really interesting and creative ways to try and sort of communicate just how powerful the characters are. And I think those unique visuals did a much better job of explaining to us what was supposed to be happening than just having the characters exposit it all. You had things like when Goku lunges towards Jiren, kind of showing the aura trail behind him to communicate just how fast he was. The fact that them sort of punching each other immediately results in kind of like side explosions. And then in something like Goku and Jiren's kind of like punch, shockwave, beam struggle, even though they're clearly sort of punching each other, it doesn't actually show their hands moving. It's kind of like their hands are moving so fast that essentially they might as well just be completely still. And then when Goku switches from kind of blocking Jiren's attacks to actually trying to counterattack Jiren's attacks, they represent that not by actually showing Goku punching, but still sort of keeping that whole, like, they're moving so fast that their hands are basically still, but instead just having Goku's hands go from being open to being clenched into a fist. Like, this stuff is all just really creative and not stuff that I really remember seeing in Dragon Ball before. We've gotten to the point that the series has been going on for so long that repeated punch flurries of looped frames don't really impress us anymore. It's kind of expected. You have to do something new to get us actually kind of surprised, and this was something new, and this felt legitimately unique, and I was kind of surprised. I also like the little speech that Vegeta gave in front of the gods, who were kind of doubting the fact that Goku could win, and Vegeta kind of replies by saying that, well, you know, if Goku hasn't mastered Ultra Instinct yet, that he'll be able to master it, because that's something more he can do, and sort of going around and talking about how throughout this entire tournament the Saiyans have kind of broke through their limits, and Goku is the same, and he's probably going to do it again. I like it because, well, first of all, it's a nice Vegeta character moment, just sort of showing how much he respects Goku, but also the fact that it sort of flashes back to Vegeta and Kefla and Kaba, and it sort of ties in the whole idea that everybody's sort of been getting power-ups in this tournament, and sort of relates it to the whole thing of, you know, breaking your limits, and Goku breaking his limits, and the fact that the opening is about breaking limits, and it's kind of the whole theme of this tournament. It's one of those things where it's kind of like subtext that isn't always acknowledged, but here they legitimately acknowledge it. And it's fun to see this arc try to legitimately say that it has kind of themes going for it. Even if the Saiyans aren't the only ones who are actually breaking their limits in this tournament, but I mean, it's Vegeta. He's gonna hype up his own race first and not necessarily mention everybody else. As for what I didn't like about this episode, well, first of all, some parts of the Goku-Jiren fight in this episode were honestly really cool and really interesting, but unfortunately they were also sort of spliced in with a lot of kind of repeated animation. Animation that was previously used for the opening, and for episode 110, and for episode 116. It kind of feels like every piece of Goku versus Jiren that has been previously animated in another part of the series has been taken and reused for this episode. Maybe you didn't notice it and it didn't take you out of anything, but unfortunately I noticed it, and it's a legitimate issue in this episode. Because essentially, by having so much reused animation in this episode, it sort of feels like it's Toei kind of breaking an unspoken rule. That is the rule that when you have a final battle and when you get close to the end of the series, basically everything is going to start looking cooler and better than what it used to look like. Whereas in this episode, it looked exactly the same as previous parts of the series because it was using the same animation from previous parts of the series. And it's unusual because those pieces of animation, the things in the opening and in 110 and in 116, were these things where it seemed like the purpose of it was to try and get us hyped for the eventual final battle with Jiren. Like those episodes were saying, look, if the animation looks so cool now, if the fight looks so cool now, imagine just how much cooler it's going to be in the final battle. And, well, this episode didn't really fully live up to that expectation at all, and that is just disappointing. If it really was the case that Super's production is so strange that they legitimately could not get this episode out without using all that repeated animation, then I am sorry for the production staff because I'm sure even they would be disappointed that they had to produce something like that, but that doesn't stop it from being a legitimate criticism. Also, the debut of the complete Ultra Instinct. I mean, on the one hand, I think it was pretty cool, but on the other hand, there was something about it that left me a little underwhelmed. And I think I've only just figured it out. It really just comes down to one question. How did Goku manage to master Ultra Instinct? I mean, the explanation that Whis seems to give is that he manages to kind of empty his mind and sort of get the gist of the whole sort of fighting entirely on instinct and focusing only on the battle, which is okay, but how did he do that? How did he manage to learn how to completely focus his mind on the battle? There isn't really much of an explanation. The explanation seems to be he just kind of figures it out, just in the nick of time, very conveniently. See, I'm not going to say this doesn't make any sense. It clearly does. There is enough logic here that I could believe that Goku just manages in the nick of time, in the heat of the moment, to figure this stuff out. But the problem is it's very underwhelming. The issue is we don't really get to get inside Goku's head when he's doing this. Instead, we're kind of just sort of watching from a distance in the same way that Beerus and Whis are. And as a result, I feel like it kind of makes me a bit disconnected to what's going on to Goku. It just feels like we're watching Goku instead of being an active part of the fight as Goku. It'd be like when Goku was fighting Frieza, after Frieza got a really big hit on Goku, when he finally came up, he suddenly had gold hair and explained that he has now managed to master his anger like Vegeta told him to, and now he's a Super Saiyan. I mean, if you think about it, that could have realistically happened. You can imagine that happening, but that would have been kind of underwhelming, wouldn't it? It doesn't really feel like it means as much without a proper trigger to it, does it? Maybe it's just especially griping because every other time that Goku had unlocked Ultra Instinct, it actually did have some kind of trigger moment to it. But here, oddly enough, for the actual complete Ultra Instinct, there was none. And it kind of made the whole moment a lot harder to understand and harder to relate to. So as for next episode, well, Goku now has the complete Ultra Instinct, but I doubt Jiren is going to give up that easily. It looks like this is the final battle. And considering it's the second last episode of the series, unless the last episode also has some kind of surprise to it, I'm pretty sure this episode was the one that they were prioritizing to have all the fancy animation and stuff like that. I do hope that the reason as to why this episode was a little bit conservative was so that next episode could completely blow us away. I mean, come on, we have 2 episodes to go, surely we want to end this series on a high note where you blow everyone away, let's just really hope. So that was Dragon Ball Super episode 129. I mean, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. It felt like they were hyping up this battle in this episode for months and months, and in the end what we ended up getting was something that, while it was a pretty good episode on its own, it didn't really feel like final battle material until the last few minutes. Add to that the fact that Mastered Ultra Instinct also feels a little underwhelming, and it kind of just makes me want to get this whole thing over and done with. Like, I have other things to do. Pretty Cure looks like it's going to be really great this season. I just finished Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and there's all these Dragon Ball Z content videos that I want to make. I just don't really know what the next 2 episodes are going to bring, and if they sort of drop the ball on this one, it's not really the most optimistic sign. I mean, don't get me wrong, I want these next 2 episodes to be really great. I want Super to get its act together at the very end. I want it to be remembered for some truly great stuff. Because despite all the times it kind of gets on my nerves, I've had a really fun time discussing Super for the last few years. And I just kind of hope that enthusiasm shows at the very end. So this is Gabby signing out, and Super's on another week's break, so I'll see you all in 2 weeks. Bye guys!